I want you guys in on this, unless you're like, I don't know, making like lewd faces or something, to do this clip.
Yeah.
I asked Ben before he goes to do a throwback clip with us, and we're doing a little bit more. Actually, it doesn't look like super vintage Hitch.
No,
it's Hitch doing his thing. Let's do it.
But none of the czars.
Oh, sorry.
And none of the Chinese kings. None of this.
By the way, the Russian Orthodox Church always stayed with Stalin. Always stayed with Stalin.
But they never killed 30%.
Sorry.
What happened?
Okay, never mind. Sorry, go on. All right, keep going.
Of their population.
Who didn't?
The Russians never killed 30% of the population before the communists took over. 20 or 30%. No czar ever did that. No Christian czar ever did any killing on anyone.
Well, no, excuse me. They started the First World War. They started the pogroms. They brought the protocols of the Elders of Zion that was imported by Tsarist secret policemen to National Socialist Christian gangsters in Europe. How much do you think the export of Russian Orthodox anti-Semitism cost us in point of lives and war? And have you ever counted up what happened to the wars, in the wars that Tsarism started and carried on, and the persecutions, and the famines, and the tortures, and the starvation, and the people who just died of neglect? Come on. You want to do this accounting? I'm here. I'm really here for you.
So,
all right, there we go. Boom.
So what I like about this, as you say, this is not at all early Hitch. This is actually very late Hitch, right? But even so, right, he's made his big turn to the right, right? This is not, this is not at all the best version of Hitchens. But even then, he knew enough that he could not stand to listen to this bullshit about how, communism is when Russia became bad. Everything was fine before that, right? He couldn't take it, right? In fact, and what this reminded me of is I recently went back and looked at this super interesting falling out debate, that Hitch had in 2002 with his friend, the novelist Martin Amis. Amos had put out a book about Stalin called Koba the Dread, which was a very basically like a short summary of the book would be like, oh my God, Stalin is bad. How come nobody knows that? It's like a really like juvenile, like kind of book. And of course,
a lot of people don't know.
That's actually, that is kind of Martin Amis in a way. like a very posh accent.
It is.
A lot of people don't know that I vetted my first Pakistani at Bilal College. And certainly Stalin, not so good.
Yeah, great novelist, kind of dumb politically.
Right.
And and then Hitchens wrote this book review, right, about Koba the Dread, where he trashed Amos, in particular for making this moral equation between Bolshevism, it's and then eventually Stalinism and fascism and Nazism, and he says this is absurd, right? He brought the point that if the 1905 revolution in Russia had succeeded, so in other words, Russia wasn't going into revolution after years of undergoing one of the most brutal experiences that any country had in World War I, right? Then all the bloodshed and everything that resulted from that, then it's reasonable to think that the way things played out after that would have been different. And then of course Amos took issue with that and wrote Hitchens this open letter. And then Hitchens responded with this piece in The Guardian. I just want to quote a paragraph from, and the piece is entitled "Don't be silly." And
every time we play one of these things or talk about it, even though it's been so long since I read him, but I did read him a lot when I was a kid. It's hysterical. I see the influence. Anyways, go ahead.
Yep.
Don't period be period silly.
Yes.
That's amazing. All right, go ahead.
Yep. So this paragraph, he says, Bolshevism, some exemplary people and causes could not be said to be quite decided on the question of Bolshevism, the only revolution that had ever defeated its enemies. There was an element of power worship here, and I'm quite prepared to concede, and those involved, including myself, are obliged to subject themselves to self-criticism. But your attempted syllogism invites a direct comparison with Hitlerism and levels the suggestion of moral equivalence to the Nazis at, say, the many hard left types who worked for Dr. Martin Luther King. My provisional critique of this ahistorical reasoning would fit into 3 short italicized sentences. Don't be silly.
That's good.
And this is, passing out like this is like Chris Matthews, like Christopher Hitchens, you're a trot. Did you think that George W. Bush's dick looked big in that suit? And then Hitch is like, well, actually, there's a symbol, in the Iliad, virility, blah, blah, blah. Chris Matt's like, oh my God, you're so smart. This guy's unbelievable.
I can't remember if you mentioned it, Ben, but it should be noted that Amos and Hitchens are really close friends going way back. And this review is actually, it's one of his best because he just completely destroys him.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, no, like going back to the 60s, there's a very long friendship there. Granted, by this point in his life, Hitchens was in the process of burning bridges, like all kinds of directions, but like they did make up later in this case, but like it's also just, again, it's remarkable that even after his post 2001 turn to the dark side, of course, if you're going to have like a complete accounting of that, there were pre 2001 like flashes of that over the course of his career, when he did take positions that were prefigure what he was going to take later. But it is a dramatic change, right? If you read like Tariq Ali, who's another person who's friends with who had been friends with Hitchens way back, right? In fact, and Tariq Ali, just to anticipate, rebel music, was the inspiration for the lyrics of the Rolling Stones' "Street Fighting Man." But he was this, he was the socialist, activist of Britain, and in his book, Bush and Babylon: The Recolonization of Iraq, he has this appendix called Christopher Hitchens, where he talks about how he used to have this good friend, this radical journalist, Christopher, who unfortunately died on 9/11 and was replaced with this neoconservative facsimile. And that's funny, and it's like really well written, but it's also like, I find it super interesting that even after that, right? Even after he'd made this big political transition, like there was still enough of the old Hitch left in him that when he saw people, when he saw his friend Martin Amos say, well, it was communism, fascism, whatever, it's all the same thing, like he, some part of him just like couldn't abide that, and he had to write that review.
Right. No, it was why he maintained he was a little bit more interesting. Although Cockburn was always the most fun. Like Cockburn was the first guy I read writing about Hitchens. Like you could read various people and agree with some of their critiques, maybe even a lot of them, but Cockburn was the one who just really slayed him because he could just he was just like, oh, really? Yeah, that's super clever, Christopher. Just like fuck, like none of the like, super serious Chomsky moralizing or none of the like Tariq Ali, like, sure, that's cool, whatever. Just sort of like Cockburn's lines on like making fun of like how Hitchens greets people and then relating that to how he snitched on a friend. Like it's just like a masterful job of taking somebody that sort of like everybody is agreeing is like, well, I mean, you got to at least admit that guy's cool. And Cockburn's just like, no. I
was
don't.
of something I remember Cockburn writing way back, like the late 90s, where he was quoting, I think this is in Counterpunch, he was quoting Christopher Hitchens had written some piece, I think in Vanity Fair, where he was talking about ordering cocktails, and he said that cocktails are like breasts that come best in twos, and Cockburn's response was, I don't know how many breasts the women that Christopher's been hanging out with have, but I've seen him first thing in the morning having trouble bringing his cigarette and his lighter into meaningful contact.
Exactly.
I love it.
We're going to do more Cockburn stuff soon. Ben Burgess, everybody check out his Patreon page. Order his book. Give them an argument. Logic for the left. And I'll see you tomorrow at around 5 on Zero Books channel, Ben.
All right. See you tomorrow. Bye.
All right. Thanks, Ben.
See you, Ben.
You just watched a Michael Brooks Show video. Subscribe to get them all. Why wouldn't you? Don't be foolish. Click subscribe below and become a patron as well. Patreon.com/TMBS. Thanks, everybody.